Hi, so thank you first of all everybody for staying with us after such a long day. So we kind of curated today to start with the early pioneering of the computer art, moving to contemporary practices, going between the technical element, the artistic, I would say, expertise or wish of expression, and big part of our project as well, it's dealing as well with how the viewers are actually I would say, taking in this kind of an art, how it's been, I said the right word, perceived. And we thought it would be very appropriate to have with us people that come from the connection between the artistic creation and the public. And this is, of course, the galleries, the curators, the art spaces that have, I think, kind of a great overview of what's happening today, what happened in the past, and what is the level of interaction that we have. So we are very lucky to have with us here today Peggy and Nabi that came all the way from Berlin. Although Nabi, you just came from Peru, a bit of a longer flight. I will shortly introduce both of them, and then each of them going to give a short presentation about their the practice, and we do a quick kind of a panel among us and open the stage for everybody. So Peggy, Schoenegge is an art historian, independent curator, author, and project manager of the exhibition platform Peer to Space, where actually William, who was just here, and I met for the first time in 2016, 17?
18.
18, okay. But still one of the first exhibitions that were dealing with the question of AI before it became such a big hype. She is the head of board of the Media Art Association in Berlin. Her work focuses on the condition and challenges of the digitalization and its impact on our everyday lives, society, and culture. In physical and virtual spaces, she curated an international group of exhibitions featuring digital art, internet art, and new media art, including in New York, Barcelona, Berlin. She also gives lectures internationally at conferences and events in cooperation with institutions such as the ZKM in Karlsruhe, the German Ethic Council, and the Immersive Tech Week in Rotterdam. In addition, she teaches cultural information at the University of Applied Science, HTW in Berlin. Peggy is currently pursuing a PhD at the University of Bonn on the theoretical and practical implementation of web-based spaces for art and the development from the beginning of the internet to our present day. Peggy?
Thank you so much. Also from my side, welcome. Good afternoon. Thanks for staying with us so long. It's been quite a day full of input. Also, thank you for that, because it was quite inspirational and also broadening my own horizon. And yeah, as Liat already mentioned, I'm a curator and art historian or researcher working for the curatorial network Peer to Space, which is kind of like a label under which we run our exhibitions, but also working as a network. And in that context, we're dealing or working within the broad realm of digital or technology-based art, which is quite, I mean, we're already talking about robotics, but then we see, you know, there's so many much more references. So, what interests me in that context is, on the one hand, how these technologies impact artistic practices as well as traditions of art, such as sculptures, paintings, but also performance, as well as how they influence the modes of interaction, but also the modes of presentation. On the other hand, I am concerned with the meaning of technology itself, not merely as a medium or artistic medium, but as a subject of critical and reflective inquiry. And in this context, I understand exhibitions as well as the artwork as a kind of tool to create a space or a framework for conscious experience, which in its best case, and I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about that later in the discussion, in that case also creates a certain kind of awareness, and in its best case, a media competence, which also is important not just for us as experts dealing with it, but also for the audience that is also dealing with AI, for instance, in various contexts, but often are rarely aware of it. Anyhow, dealing with contemporary art, as contemporary art generally tends to be several steps ahead of its time, orientated toward experimental exploration and engaging with the cultural and societal implication. In this spirit, I would like to introduce you to a selection of work that addresses the interrelation of body and technology, presenting a variety of forms of digital embodiment and examining different modes of human-machine interaction, also seen as a result of this embodiment. In 2018, and Liat already mentioned it, I co-curated, together with my colleague Tina Sauerländer, the AI exhibition Pandora and Vinci, Art and Artificial Intelligence Today at the NRW Forum in Düsseldorf. The aim of the exhibition was to, the aim was to present the actual state of AI at that time, neither following a utopian nor a dystopian vision, but mapping the field as it stood back then. I think what's also worth it to mention, actually Liat also said it already, what's worth noting is that the exhibition took place at a time, 2018, at a moment when AI was not yet a subject of such a broad public discourse in a way it is today. And although the discourse has shifted since then, and of course the quality of the technology has also evolved, the exhibited work retain their relevance till today, continuing to address questions that remain still urgent. And what's really nice is that, I mean, this is also where we got to know each other, Liat, but also I met William back then. And it's also great to observe, you know, how the works developed, how the questions developed, but still being aware of they're still important. It would have been too easy to now address your work or William's work, as they're also on view in the exhibition, so I decided to take a closer look to a work by Justine Aymar called Coexistence from 2017. The work explores how a form of primitive artificial intelligence communicates with a human being. The Japanese actor and dancer Mirai Moriyama, who we can see in the back image on the left side, just to be sure, who interacts with the AI face-to-face, animated by an and the AI is animated by an artificial life system based on a neuronal architecture. Just giving you some insights into the video. The AI in this video embodies a distinctly non-anthropomorphic mode of understanding, one that operates essentially through decision-making processes rather than language as conventionally understood. The dialogue between human and machine thus unfolds through unstructured forms of communication by signals, bodily movements, and also vocalization that exchanged between these two entities of different intelligences. Through a deep learning system, the robot learns continuously from its interaction with the human performer. In this process, both the human and the robot attempt to negotiate new terms of coexistence. I'm giving you a short time to dive into that interaction.
どこから来たの？今これ裸？いやまあ裸っていうかね。
This is now a very interesting moment. Because what's particularly compelling here is the dynamic that emerges between these two entities, which takes on a character of a performance in a certain way. while simultaneously revealing something fundamental about human behavior also. Although the robotic system is designed to learn from its counterpart and adapt to the human being, it is in fact Mirai who in response to this communicative gap and the exploratory nature of the situation here, begins to mirror the gestures and the sound of the robot. This inversion can be understood as a kind of expression of deeply rooted social behavior in human tendency, or like the human tendency to seek proximity and alignment with an unfamiliar through mimicry and adaptive attunement. I will step a bit forward so it becomes, this moment here becomes now very visible as the way he moves his hands, his arms. It becomes quite similar to how the robot is behaving. So also part of it is also to create this relationship, this coexistence, what the title of this work is also referring to. Also dealing with the topic of coexistence, which especially interacting with new technologies is something that becomes more relevant and urgent these days. Leave you that moment, because that's really nice. So talking about coexistence, I also want to reference to another work by Dagmar Scheurer, which I presented in the two-person show, Technosymbiosis Between Body, Code and System, that I presented at the Austrian Cultural Forum in Berlin last year. Actually, I also presented that work in Nabi space, I think 2 years ago it was, anyway, to be more up to date, I focus on this one here. In the exhibition of Technosymbiosis, we explored how technologies such as AI are reshaping our understanding of the human body and how our interaction with, and thus relation to technology, transformed over recent years, evolving in a system of code. In Scheurer's work, Where Does the Rest of the World Begin?, she reflects on the deep entanglement of human consciousness, natural environment, but also contemporary technologies. The multimedia installation that consists of 2 digital animations, 3D prints, as well as a mixed reality experience, she creates a spatial narrative in which she poetically links the scientific concept of symbiosis and neurosynchrony, applying these concepts to our existence in the post-digital age. So on the one hand, she draws on Lynn Margulis' theory of symbiosis, in which, against Darwin's model of competitive survival of the fittest, she argues that it is the cooperative development at the microbial level that drives change and evolution. And on the other hand, Scheurer invokes the concept of neurosynchrony, which is the phenomenon by which neural activity aligns between 2 or more people who engage with technology in a same way, but also under some similar conditions. And just thinking about how we are used to use our smartphones these days, for instance, which is quite the same all over the world, that might be one of the quite striking examples to show that the way we create habits maybe becomes quite similar, and thus the way our neural system or neural activity works respectively becomes quite the same. So these 2 theoretical frameworks foreground the deep interconnectivity of all organic and non-organic agents, challenging the received notions of individuality, singular consciousness, and subjectivity. And in this artistic engagement, the boundaries blur, not only between the digital and the analog, also presenting this mixed reality experience, but also between human and the technological, and by its extension also this differentiation between nature and culture. The work thus proposes that new media can be employed in ways that promote a society characterized by coexistence, responsible innovations, and conscious relationships to technologies. And in this context, I would also like to relate to a work that was also featured called Chimera, a series of hybrid monitor sculptures consisting of short 4K animation loops, which she also extended through AR applications. The digital animation resemble a classical still life, as we can see it here. These are just screenshots from these three works. So relating to still life, depicting elements of both the technological as well as the organical or natural. Also including subtle movements, which we unfortunately I couldn't show you today. Anyhow, there are subtle movements taking place that also translate this actual traditional genre of still life into the contemporary digital age. The custom-built AR application that is part of the work dissolves the boundaries also between the screen and its surrounding, which at the same time involves the visitor actively through interaction, who as a result kind of like becomes part of the artwork and also in some way actually activates the work as it's supposed to be created, and also extending the understanding not just from still life but also for sculpture, as the monitors at the same time are not wall mounted but actually are standing free in the room, functioning as a sculptural objects, which then gets extended by the AI application. And also in this body of work not only proposes a new approach to sculpture through its technological extension, it also challenges the categorical distinction between nature and culture, pointing toward the blurring of these boundaries in a symbiotic relation in which technology increasingly impact biological systems, while those systems simultaneously adapt to technological conditions. Finally, I would like to draw your attention to the ongoing body paint series by Julia Boerwinkel and Friedemann Banz, which began in 2014 already. And in this series, the body becomes the generative impulse. Recordings of the performances in their studio are coupled with fluid simulation, producing forms that follow the movement of the performer, translating physical body language by motion tracking into a transparent digital gesture that settles into an amorphous body of color and textures, as we can see it here in the video. These forms, which take shapes in painterly expression and remind us on, Jackson Pollock's abstract action paintings maybe, do not exist in isolation. Instead, transitions between forms recur across different times and spaces, then are reorganized and crystallized into a pictorial moment that retains an inherent flexibility. The individual prints that are part of this series are thus crystallization extracted from these movements, situational shots that Banz and Boerwinkel assemble in their presentation. Through the use of augmented reality, the artist place an additional digital layer over the two-dimensional image in the actual exhibition space, again involving the visitor, the viewer, and creating not just an embodiment in a certain way, but also an activation and participation of the artwork. Drawing attention once more to the complexity of vision. The image becomes a virtual sculpture brought into being through the movement of the viewer, whose shape shifts in response to the individual position and action in space, opening a space of definition, composition, and expansion of reality in its technological space. So here again, we encounter a technological extension of performance, one that simultaneously proposes a new approach to abstract painting, but also performance in its broadest sense. And just to come to an end and sum up like why presenting these three examples in the context of embodiment is that they all refer to embodiment in a quite broader sense. As we just heard, the understanding of embodiment within the art historian or research context is quite diverse and relates to different aspects that includes or involves the body. In this context here, or with these three examples I just presented, it is in a way robots adapt to human movements or behavior. It is also in the way human-machine interaction impacts biological systems, including the human body itself. And it's also embodiment in a way technology offers a creative potential, building new visual worlds by translating physical body movement into a digital or robotic form. And at the same time, all these three works remain legible within art historical frameworks connecting to practices such as performance, sculpture, and painting, which through new technologies, these traditions undergo a paradigm shift in how we experience the artwork, how we interact with it, but also how it is created and what we're going to discuss later, how it's also presented. So of course there would be more. I mean, all these works are quite complex and there would be more to say, but in regard to our time and also the retaining time for our discussion, I would just leave it here and say thank you.
Our next speaker is Nabi Nara, who is a Berlin-based curator and a founder of Soma Art in Berlin. It's a platform exploring the intersection of art, technology, and social practices. Her work examines how technological systems actively shaped bodies, identities, and future imaginaries. She developed a curatorial format that brings together artists, researchers, and communities to critical engagement with AI, robotic, and emerging technologies. Her long-term project, Becoming Future Foregrounds for Feminist and Diverse Perspective in Technological Culture, creating spaces for collective experimentation and new forms of knowledge production. Her practice moved between exhibition making, research, and public discourse, with presentation in international contexts, including the Berlin Science Week and ICA 2025. She is currently served on the selection committee for the upcoming Videonale at the Kunstmuseum Bonn, and contribute as a jury member for the International New Media and Digital Art Festival. She approaches curating as an active, practical practice, not only as presenting work, but constructing the condition through which alternative future can be emerged. Nabi?
Thank you. Yeah, actually, I like to define myself art activist. Yeah. I'm the founder of Soma Art Berlin, and Soma is founded in 2014, so it's around 12 years old, young art space. And we are based in the Berlin-Kreuzberg. Kreuzberg is a similar neighborhood like here. It's the most multicultural area of Berlin, and we have around 180 different nationalities and backgrounded residents, and also really diverse artists based there. So in around 7 years ago, I started to see the major art institutions presenting new media art like really seriously and very massively. But it was for me very visible that there was still largely male-dominated. So this is the theme that I want to talk about today. But at the same time, I was discovering many women artists and diverse artists working with technology with very strong and experimental practices. So that contrast gave me this vision that I want to curate and present diverse and more of women artists program. So it was started in 2021. The project was 100% women artists. The title was On Myth, and the next one was on algorithm, It was also 100% women artists with a diverse background. And now 2024 and 2025, I have this project. It's called Becoming a Future. So this was, yeah. It was my biggest vision that I start this project. And so how this is possible, so I would, how do you say, introduce myself as a survivor of deadline, application deadline survivors. So very luckily, all these projects since the last 10 years was supported by Berlin Senate under the program. They want to support more diverse voices in the project funding. So very luckily, we had a lot of, generous funds from also other institutions. So that was the reason that we could go on. So I want to, so now I'd like to share this special project. The video is something I made back then I was working as a video journalist. And also from my curatorial side, I helped shape this story. Back then, she wanted to be the first woman to land on the moon and collect all the flags left behind. So there were no female astronauts on the moon at that time, so she took this mission very seriously. She even changed her name, Lena, to Luna, and Luna started a crowdfunding campaign aiming for millions and millions of euros. But did she reach her goal? How much do you think she could collect at the time, like 10 years ago? Because at the time, the crowdfunding with the art was very much high, and yeah. So, but she could collect at 40,000 euros. So I thought, okay, this is from like general public. It's a really interesting project. So I thought, but she didn't land. So we didn't land with this project on the moon, but we landed in the Cabe in Berlin. So it was 2015. It's already almost 10 years ago. Yeah. Yes. So my biggest question and then practice is always about identity. As I said, this our Soma art is already 12 years old, but before these 7 years, almost half year, we spent. So I used to focus on the presenting of past narratives. So seems like war and post-colonial stories, but it required a lot of research, education in large scale, and care. And also we had this Anna. These stories is never going to end. It really needs a lot of effort and emotional energy and everything. So it was in the end. How do you say? It was really divesting my life. So it also takes really long years to understand all this, what happened. But I just realized that it's so important to create our place in the future as well. So like this kind of work, like Mohsen Hazrati is an Iranian artist. So he uses his heritage, like Hafez's fortune-telling machine, in the digital age. The poetry-telling machine merges old and new. This kind of practice really aligned with my vision to connect heritage with new technologies in a playful and intelligent way. So this is the with the part of, it was a part of the Remember the Future project. So it was really. How do you say? It was, I think this artist really achieved what he wanted to present as an immigrant, that the best what he has as a passion, and Hafez's telling machine in a very playful way. So I saw this kind of work is the one that I want to work further. So this project is, this door is the never closing door. This is work by Korean artist Jin Lan Ha, and then it was one work of Ummi's work from the Ummis. So The next one is this was also one work from a MISS project, 2021. So this project is called The Weather in Our Head. Kyoko explores how human emotions and global climates are connected, how our inner weather and emotions mirror the outer world. They use real data brain scans and CO2 heat maps to create poetic and visual installations that makes complex science feel human. So this is most recent project that we are running now since 2 years. I started to think, and then I think it was really important, and I had this good gut to start future-oriented art practices with a diverse background. So this is a Becoming Future, how it begins. This is not that we are asking what is going to happen, but what could happen. So it was very important that we design our futures with care and with our own terms and codes and with complexity. Yes, so this is the work of Minu Park in Becoming Future series project. So I included her practice here because it shifts how we understand the relationship between body and machine. In her cyborg series, the machine is not about control or intelligence. It becomes something fragile, something emotional, and this is very important. Her cyborg tremble, they hesitate, they try to connect. Through this, she suggests that even a machine can carry emotion. And in a subtle way, these bodies reflect what it means to move through systems where identity is not fixed. So the cyborg becomes a space in between. Between machine and organism, between distance and belonging. She shows that even in artificial systems, something deeply human remains. And now we move to Marlene Barth's exhibition. So she questions the human urge to classify bodies, species, systems, and explores how these visual patterns shape both science and culture. She let us to rethink how we define nature, intelligence, and even ourselves. So her interest lies in what she calls post-natural patterns, where humans, non-humans, and technology meet on equal terms. Instead of putting humans at the center, she asks, what if we weren't? And what new ways of seeing might emerge if we let go of control? So I include this work. So the next one, I had very limited time, so I'm going really quickly. Next one is artist Alapab, and this work titled "When Body Is Not Enough." She creates a slow and immersive game environment, and inside this world, there we encounter a character called Big Dog. This is a military robot traumatized by human use. This machine carries behavior that comes from its creators. Violence is repeated, memory is embedded. So the question becomes, what do machines learn from us? And what kind of bodies are we creating through these systems? So this work is by Joaquina Salgado. You see animated faces, morphing, shifting, each one created from real facial captures. And the work explores power, surveillance, and the way we experience control. So it's coming from her real experience. It began with the oil protests where several women, including the artists, were experience aggression, they were forced to give their biological data in the checkpoint, and otherwise they were not getting free. So here she used this same technique, facial capture and motion tracking. She reused this, but not for control, but to tell their story in an anonymous and poetic way. Yeah, so so these are the scenes of public intervention. And the work was AR and mixed media, mixed reality works. And this was so much, how do you say, beloved by general public. So all this family and kids was queuing a lot. And I saw there is a lot of potential that with the technology-based work that we can go more in the public space. And this is also another setting in South Korea. The mixed reality works can very entertain, and we can also, it could be received by a wider audience. So in this project, we put this really big stress, and that this is a solo serial project, and every artist has duty to give a workshop to share. And then this was always the most beautiful time, that it becomes like more community feeling, and it's really, we learn from each other and support each other. Yeah. Yeah, this is the scene of collaborations. So to conclude, yeah, I think what we see in these works is not only reflection of technology, but a reflection of ourselves inside these systems, and we are no longer outside of them. And this is where my work as a curator begins. Through Becoming Future, we try to create space for more voices and more perspectives, and different ways of imagining, and what technology can be. Yeah. Thank you.
Shall we just leave this one?
Just leave it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cheers. Oh, you want to? Doesn't matter.
So thank you both, Peggy and Nabi, for your presentation.
Thank you.
And I found it to be very important to have your voice here, to come in this kind of a timeline that we created here. We started this morning with the early pioneering. I think it was very more mechanical related creation, moving into slowly the early computational, into today AI digitalization setup. And this is kind of a very strong shift of aesthetics, and I think it's important, Nabi, that you brought up as well the gender element, because I think this brings the question, what was the kind of aesthetic used by, I would say, early media computer artists and robotic artists, and the use that we have today when the technology is much more accessible. If before it was usually connected to large research center and not once, of course, related to military industry, as it is as well today. And so it's kind of a strong shift of the aesthetics that come, how this aesthetics you feel has shifted the content of the artwork that was being made back then till today. And how do you feel in your own practice, because both of you are not since today working in this intersection. Before, if we look 15 years ago till today with the huge AI revolution, is your interest has been shifted over this time? So there's several questions I'm building up here, but is those questions, I found like it all like kind of relevant for both of you, for the question that you've been set in the beginning when you entered into this field. And where are you standing with it today, and what is kind of the future perspective that both of you are holding?
Okay. These were many. Let's start with how the topic changed. I mean, what I said in the very beginning, art tends to be always some steps ahead of its time. And I actually think, I mean, like with a changing society, of course, the discourse and the topics are changing. Also with new upcoming technologies or evolving technologies, of course, that also changes, you know, what artists are doing with it. But generally speaking, I mean, there will always be the topic of what it means to be human, this topic of, you know, reflecting humankind, the impact of what humankinds are doing, as well as nature. So that there will always be some topics that will always be part of the artistic discourse. So I'm not sure if we can actually talk from an actual change, but I would definitely relate it to a societal change that is always part of the artwork as well. But I wouldn't say that back then they rather worked abstractively than figuratively, which is not the case. So yeah, that one is a bit tricky to answer, to be honest. I hope I gave at least an approach to it. And then, or maybe, Nabi, do you want to say something?
So I want to be brutally honest to this question. And yeah, to be honest, we have actually, as a woman, like you work with all your imaginations, with these computations and digital art booms, we have more chance than before that we have to, for example, stone carving. It is, we have more chance now. And the computer, I also want to mention that computer was anyway this woman who was calculating, as all of us know. So I think this is nothing that I want to say. I think it's really the right time that we really have to start and put really more diverse voices. That is the most important time. And also, as we talked about here, the perspective of women artists are quite different. We talk about more symbiotic futures.
Yeah. One thing I would like to mention, though, is that we should also not forget there always have been women artists, also within the robotic plotting, drawing machines context. We have someone as Vera Molnar, for instance. The problem is, like, all the female artists, and that's, I mean, that we all know that, and they're just rarely seen or rarely presented.
Yes.
And maybe that's something that is changing in a way that we have a better, well, at least people like us have a much more awareness for that topic. And I would say, like, in my bubble in Berlin, for instance, it's more women than men, for instance. So it's rather, let's say, 60, 70 to 30, 40 maybe, male perspectives, female perspective to male perspectives. But what's changing, but then it's also, I don't know if it's, you know, I'm just thinking if it's something that changed, because what's changing is that all the technologies become more accessible, they're more affordable, they're, you know, made for a broader audience. That's different in comparison to the 1950s, 60s, 70s. But then, yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, what's important is women, and also, I mean, we've already talked about women pioneers here in that content. At the same time, we have, I think, a quite good balance in the artists selected. I think that's pretty good. I think that is something we need to work on, and that's our responsibility as curator or cultural experts or workers, to push women perspectives in that context, to make it visible, to, you know, inspire little girls to maybe become a technician, I don't know, like something, working with tech, doing digital art, whatever, but not having this cliche characteristics in mind, being like, oh, this is for boys, this is for girls. But then at the same time, and that's why I was a bit like, we should not forget there always have been these women working within this field, creating art in that context. So that was important for me to mention. Because these women also, even though they're old, or maybe, I think Vera just died anyway, I think she passed. You know, they rarely have seen in their career, and that's something we also need to change. So make them at least now visible, showing their impact.
So I can't quote now, but there is about this quotage or percentage. There was a very interesting, very recent news. Actually, in the new media, digital-based new media artists, we have more women artists now, because it's suddenly we have this condition that you need your computer, and then you can also create some work being an artist. So, but this is so less paid work and job. So we have more men being more working as engineers, and then becoming more women artists. Exactly, and this is I cannot quote now, but there was really this news in the. Yeah, and I think, I don't know, what do you feel about this, but I think it's also kind of true. Yeah.
I would happy if you can try to position a bit what you experience here today with this symposium and with the exhibition yesterday within your own practice, because we know like this drawing machine, painting machine, it's a fairly small niche, I would say, in the big art world right now, with a strong tendency to go on the very spectacle of the digital representation, like big colors, one can go huge sizes. And how do you feel that people coming into your exhibition, your art space, react to something that's maybe a bit more subtle, a bit more like going back into, I would say, analog materials that are being produced with high technology? Like I think the work of actually Justin Ahmad, it's a really nice example of a very quiet work that used a very high technology. And I was kind of just curious about the discussion, or how you feel the shift of the audience in relation to digital and the physical.
In my experience, like referencing these drawing machines, for instance, as long as it's passive or good, no problems. They stand in front of it, they look at it, they wonder about it. In best case, they're thinking about it, what's happening, and, you know, depending on how you contextualize and what the artwork or the artist is dealing with. But as soon as it becomes interactive, then it's getting a bit tricky. As I'm also doing a lot of XR exhibitions, presenting VR experiences, but also AR and MR, that is something that is still very challenging, not just for the visitors, also for institutions, as on the one hand, it requires much more effort for maintenance, but also much more effort when it comes to explanation of how to use the artwork, what to do. Visitors are always still afraid of, you know, breaking the artwork, destroying the artwork, which, I mean, that's a side story. It can happen. I once had this case where someone was like experiencing that one VR work, and it figured out it was a gamer, and he knew a combination of buttons where he was able to move the elements within the virtual space. So he just actually destroyed the artwork. He hacked the artwork. So, I mean, yeah, in theory that's possible, but that's usually, yeah, that's actually not the case. Because usually people have rarely a conscious experience with these technologies. So they're rather afraid than, you know, just diving in. What was really nice to see, because that's completely different with kids, for instance, when we had the Pandora and Vinci exhibition, we presented from William Latham, the VR experience, Mutator VR, it was called, I think, in which you had like a virtual something, biological building, and you were able to mutate it by pushing buttons, by using the controller. And again, like all the adults were kind of like very hesitant about going inside the VR because they always feel exposed. They feel like on a stage and then people are watching you, but you can't see the people. So they feel as being a performer, but then at the same time being out of control of the situation. Where instead kids are just going crazy. And it's so fun to observe. Because what they did in that case was that there were 3 kids. One was wearing a headset, and then each of the other 2 kids was having one controller. So the kids with the controllers were randomly pushing button, being like, do you see something? Does anything happen inside the VR? And then the kid was explaining what it sees. At the same time, they were able, because we had the inside VR projection at the wall, on the wall. So the kids were also, when the kid was with the VR set, was looking in the right direction, and then they pushed a button, they could also see what's happening. But of course, there had to be this perfect moment. Anyhow, the kid with the headset was always telling what it's seeing, and then at some point they figured out what's happening. But it was like a performance itself, because they figured out how this technology works, and that is something that is so important also for why we need exhibitions like these, because people rarely know about it. People rarely understand AI. People rarely understand all XR technologies. We mix up all the wordings, all the terms of it. And we have to create this consciousness about it, to create a media competence, to create a media understanding, especially in these days where AI is there, it's in our everyday life. And if we don't know how it's working, well, then we get a big problem, because at some point we are out of control. And right now we still are able to, influence the development. But going back to the question, I think the interactive part is more challenging than, because I think, I forgot who was saying that before. I think it was you, Sean, talking about James Tate's machines as also sculptural. I think it was you, right? So it becomes rather something sculptural, and they are used to deal with sculptures. They know don't touch it. They know keep your distance, but still it's nice to observe because it's also moving. So it's quite attracting for people in an exhibition, actually.
But you don't feel that there is a level of like I'm always kind of trying to say of like the appreciation. If before there was like the importance of the artist, and right now as you said there is like one look into a digital creation or a machine-made artwork, would it still be considered, I would say, if I position your role within the larger art world, would you feel that there is a distinguished, say, okay, this is not really, it's too experimental, or it's already been accepted? Because I think there is a big shift over the past 15 years, and if you feel this is as well a change of the spectacle, of the viewer who comes, the audience, the people who come to see your shows.
Do you want to go first, Nabi?
So, because our space and then the other conventional institutions and museums, they are totally different world. So in my space, all these young emerging artists, they come to compete and then see what's coming next. And it's almost all of the works are extremely interactive. And in every year you have a new type of work. Like now it's somehow everyone makes slow games as a work. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you have to use also joystick and things like that. Yeah, but I was also talking about something like, I don't want to name this institution now. This very, very big museum in Berlin, and so, for example, one artist was talking with them to present the AI work, which was very simple, but to mention about their artifacts in the museum, how this is so should be connected together, and they were having this conversation like 3 years, because they discussed who's going to take care of this work, and then which person should be always there to take care. And this kind of thing is a really big things for these museums. Mm-hmm. I understand in some point too, but it's sometimes I really think they really wish to have something new or not. This is really two different worlds that I feel, yeah. I think they really need to open a little bit more. Well,
I think that's what you said about talking about the context or what kind of art space or institution it is quite important for the question, what people are getting out of it. I think another aspect of it is it makes so clear how important it is to, on the one hand, create a good setting, like present the artworks properly, and not just being like, okay, there's something digital, let's put it in the corner somewhere, but understand that the needs of a digital artwork, whatever shape it has, are quite different in comparison to, I don't know, like a painting or photography, which you usually just put on the wall. So there are different things to think about, make it accessible for the visitors, to make clear this is something you're supposed to touch, you're supposed to go crazy and, experience what's happening in here. When it comes to the question like, is that art, or, what I'm getting out of, or what am I supposed to learn, then this is also, for this, you on the one hand have this accompanying program that helps a lot to convey all these different aspects that are part of, or questions that are part of the exhibition, but also of the artwork. So that on the one hand, but also, explanation, because you always have like a quite mixed group of people going in these exhibitions. You have those people that are really open-minded, really outgoing, and raising questions as many as they can, and asking, especially at events like openings or some artist talks, and like these. So they're, very outgoing, and you don't have to do a lot to make them think and be in it. And then you have people that are really shy and are rather in the back than, raising their hands. And those you have to pick up in a different way, and that's something to think with when you curate an exhibition. How can I create a framework that picks up everyone, every different kind of person interacting in a different manner? So that's important. But I generally think if there's a good exhibition that finds a balance in education, but also fun and experience, at least they're thinking about how much fun it was. And in the best case, I had one very fun moment in that Pandora and Vinci exhibition. There was a company event in that show, and they booked a curator's tour. And it was me doing this tour. And I don't know if you know Düsseldorf, but Düsseldorf, like this cliché audience in Düsseldorf is like very poshy, more painting than digital art. So they were arriving in front of the exhibition, and there was no door. So you already entering on that floor, you could see a lot. So they were entering this floor, seeing this digital stuff and being like, oh, it's digital. And I thought like, okay, that's gonna be fun, like because they were not excited at all. So what I did was kind of like, explaining to them, on the one hand, what is that AI stuff people were rarely talking about, so we were all afraid of AI taking over humanity. So what I was doing was I just explained, on the one hand, what is AI, on the other hand, how the artist used AI, and then, as a result, so what's happening now here? But this question of what's happening here and what am I supposed to do with it always ends in a question being like, and that's also important in our exhibition in general, that it's not about saying this is good and this is bad, but like opening the space of reflection, being like, okay, this is the fact, this is what they're doing, and then we have two paths, and we don't know which one is the right one, but let's talk about it, what's pro and con for each path, and what's good, what's the potential of these technologies, and what are challenges or maybe even disadvantages. So I did that also with that group of people, and it was really fun, because that, at the end, was so successful, because all the people were coming with their smartphones, being like, okay, so I open WhatsApp, and I type in UND, no, just you, and it's already suggesting me und. That's AI. I'm like, yeah. I mean, it's not the smartest version, but yeah, that's already part of AI. And they're like, that's crazy. So they were recognizing the potential of it, but also as we had some artworks that were quite critical about it, also raising important questions. I mean, you was also asking questions of authorship, like who's responsible, like, in a nice way, but still, like, you could push that question further away or further ahead. So they were also thinking about that, and that was really nice to see that we had an audience that really was not interested in all that stuff, but at the end was thinking about what AI is and what it means for their everyday life. And that is already there in a very low level back then, but still it was there. And that was, you know, so yeah, it can change things and it can create awareness and knowledge.
Thank you for this. I think this is a kind of a good point as well to maybe open the discussion if any other questions are coming, because this is where we started with this human-machine relationship. And as you said, art is always a couple of steps ahead, because we can ask questions, we can play around, and we can kind of reflect on the role of the technology in our life right now. So first of all, I would like to thank you and open if there are any other further questions from the audience. The very tired audience. They all look very. So I guess we will wrap it up and go to the exhibition now. Yeah. So thank you everybody for staying with us so long.